we're going to be talking about the application steps and what you need to do to get this right. Guys, like you know, anything you're doing in waterproofing, surface preparation is key, the most important step in any waterproofing application. Get this piece correct and you've got a uniform membrane application from there. So it makes the membrane application very, very efficient and runs smoother. Spend a bit more time on your surface prep and everything else runs smoother from there. Key points on this. Obviously, surfaces need to be clean. You're dealing with underground applications, so you might have pressure cleaned the wall or cleaned the wall. Next day a dust storm happens or overnight, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of whole dust and crap and dirt on the surface again. That needs to be removed. Take that into account because that can impact the adhesion of your membrane depending on what type of product you're using. Also ensure that if it's on concrete substrates, curing residues, release agents, all these sorts of things are removed. Sometimes with formwork, you can even have residues of diesel on concrete walls still. That needs to be removed. So look at oil degreasers, degreasers you need to have, the equipment to ensure that substrate is clean. If it's a block wall, then you shouldn't have those sorts of residues, but particularly with concrete walls that have been formed, that's a key one to look at. Ensure that mortar joints are free from sharp objects. That's a key one because that's obviously going to penetrate your membrane. You need to be smoother. Honeycombed areas, perp joints in block walls, they need to be filled. There's a number of repair products on the market or preparation products on the market, primarily cementitious, as in repair mortars. Get that right. Membranes are not designed, guys, to bridge large gaps or joints on retaining walls. So just don't think because you've got a joint there that might not be a movement or control joint that you can just bridge it with your membrane. Many of you that have done liquid membranes before would have seen that as you apply it on walls, if it hasn't been prepared properly or primed, they'll just get sucked into the wall and you have that pinholing phenomena. You need to ensure that you overcome that. Get that right because you'll actually save on your membrane application. You'll reduce the consumption levels of your membrane by getting the preparation piece right, either through preparation products or priming. All vertical control joints should be filled. That's very, very important. If you've got precast wall joints, panel joints, they should be filled and flushed. If they need to be sealed as per the specification of the substrate that is being used in the building, make sure that's done properly. If in doubt, ask your builder, ask your client, don't just assume. Dinsel walls, if they are being used in that application, you've got a membrane going over it, you need to look at things like our Gripset OP primer, which can bond to plastic surfaces and allow you to then get good adhesion of your membrane on top of that. Detailing. We're big on this, you know, Gripset's big on this. It's very, very important. Many failures occur between that block wall and the footing, if we talk about those sorts of retaining walls, underground walls, just due to poor work practice. I've seen so many guys put a great membrane on a wall, neglected to spend a bit more attention to detail at the base, at the wall floor junction, is in service, that's where the water goes through, and you are buggered from there. You can't just look at liquids just coating over that joint. Even though it might not be like a timber frame wall where there's movement, there's pressure underground. You've got water that's accumulating. If you've got a 3 metre retaining wall or a 2 metre retaining wall, the lower you go on that wall, the greater pressure you've got down the base. So very, very important that that joint is protected to make sure the junction between two different surfaces is protected against the ingress of water. And so you might need something like our elastproof joint band, which is in our spec to ensure that that is protected and done right. The base of the wall, as I said, is going to be where the major concentration of water is. Pay attention to that. You work from the bottom up, getting that right. Very, very important. Footings that extend past the wall. Yeah, I can hear you guys out there. There's a lot of nightmares when you're trying to prepare those areas. Either sometimes it's the reverse or it's a very rough footing. Again, you need to ensure that that piece is prepared so you can detail correctly. Don't just think, I'll just slap a bit of bitumen over this area and hope that it's going to be right. If you get the bottom piece wrong, everything's going to be stuffed from there. So it's important that you really pay attention to that piece at that base of that wall. Water sits down there, even though you've got drain details and the way it's designed with ag drains, different metals and stones that are down there to help drain away, and even drainage cells. But don't assume that the base of that wall can be treated like the top of it. Very, very important. As I said, our detail is our elastproof joint band, as many of you know, and we use that with all our products and all our systems. We make sure that bridges that junction between the block wall and the footing, or the brick wall and the footing, or whatever that detail is. And that way we are 100% certain that the ingress of water will not go through that joint. It'll handle any thermal movement. And also it allows us to know that that piece is reinforced before the major membrane goes on top. So we'll come to their membrane options now. What are they? In Gripset's current range, we've got 4 different options. So I'll go through our cementitious options first. Our Gripset C1P, it's a flexible one-part cement-based system, very popular for the fact that it dries quick, it's a one-component product, you can get your build-up on it. It is applied to both damp surfaces, also over newly poured green substrates. If the concrete hasn't fully cured, it'll still bond and adhere. And a lot of guys like it for the fact that it's primerless. You just need a wall that's dampened. So if you're going onto a surface that actually might have been cured for many, many months and it's dry, you actually can get a hose, dampen that wall first, free of surface water, and that product goes on there. It doesn't blister if you've got any retained moisture in block work. But at the same time, all those surface preparation details we spoke about earlier, you've got to ensure that you follow those methods to ensure that you get optimum performance between the joints of blocks or brickwork. And if you've got good spray equipment, there is spray equipment out there for the applicators doing large areas that can spray cementitious systems on top. Gripset 2P, our two-part flexible waterproof membrane. Very similar properties to the C1P, except it's a two-component, more flexible than the C1P. It is hard wearing, very good resistance and great durability. The advantage of the C1P and 2P, we know that the fact they're both potable water approved, we use them in swimming pools and water tanks, they're going to handle that constantly wet environment of an underground application. So there's a big advantage there. The only difference with 2P is more often than not, we would recommend a primer to be applied over the top of that prior to applying that to the wall. Our bituminous products, I go back to our roots now, things like Gripset 51, still very commonly used out there. We would recommend this for what we call low-risk areas. A lot of garden beds, this is used for. If you've got areas where you've got high water pressure, I would go for things like our C1P and 2P. But this is a great product still, very popular, bonds to just about everything, cost-effective, outstanding surface adhesion, bonds to damp surfaces. It's self-priming because you can dilute it with water, and it's still got excellent resistance to ground sulfate. So one that you can keep looking at. So the key points of applications, gentlemen and ladies, those of you who are out there waterproofing retaining walls or looking at it, specifying it, always ensure that you apply membranes, if they're liquid membranes, and those four I've just discussed, at the coverage recommendation, and all that's on our data sheet. Always extend the membrane to above the soil height, just to be 100% certain. You do not want to let it go below, particularly for the fact that if you stay under the soil line, you've got the opportunity for water to be absorbed into that wall substrate, and it's going to undo a lot of your work. So you go higher than that line, work with your client. If you need to put tape lines, etc., do that. If you've got textures and renders, as I said, C1P and 2P are the way to go, but it is a far better way of ensuring that you've got that sorted out. If you need to wrap your membrane to go over the top of the wall, which many of you may do because some of those applications will have a slab poured on top of it afterwards, you can incorporate that. So take all that into account, plan it at that stage to get that piece right. And when you finish the membrane application, don't just walk away from site. Go back and check just to ensure that the surface preparation you've done has worked, particularly after your first coat. And if you've got dirt and crap there, remove it. Don't just try and finish the membrane onto the dirt because that's a waste of time. And always allow the membrane to cure properly. Okay, so find out on that data sheet of the product, what is the curing time before backfilling? Really important. Don't just say to your builder, oh, tomorrow you can come and backfill if the membrane needs 72 hours a week. Check that out, because again, all the good work you do, those areas are constantly wet. You only need one downpour after the backfill's in there, and the water will retain there, it stays there. So it's almost like a planter box or a tank application, and you need the membrane to be cured properly before it can be exposed to those conditions.
Any questions you have, 1800 650 435, or get hold of any of the Gripset team out on the road and they'll help you. Until next time, I'll see you then on Seal for Good.